I'm big.
And I'm surly.
I don't know if my mic was close enough. Let's try that again because we're unprofessional. I'm big.
And my contract doesn't include retakes, so let's get this done in one.
My contract doesn't include retake. I completely didn't even realize we were starting this with me smoking cigarettes. Kids don't smoke. It's a terrible habit. Once you get started, you'll learn how delicious and wonderful cigarettes are, but just don't ever break that seal.
Well, I mean, these days, a lot of kids are vaping instead of smoking cigarettes, which are slightly better.
I don't know. It's grosser to me.
Probably doesn't taste as gross.
I enjoy the taste of tobacco. That's one of the reasons why when I attempted to vape, I couldn't. That the closest thing to tobacco flavor I could find was like this whiskey caramel.
So you
which
like
was okay.
Smelling and tasting like an ashtray.
Yes.
Well, teach their own.
I like rich tobacco smoke. I was raised on cowboy movies. Hung out with a lot of old men at a co-op.
Oh my God. Really, Grandpa?
That's who took me to the co-op.
I know.
It was literally just a bunch of, I mean, this was like the late 80s.
I know.
So, but they still all smoked. They still all hung out and smoked. They hung out and smoked next to a grain silo, which is not a great idea because when grain is being sprayed, there's a lot of particulates in the air, and there is a chance something could go horribly wrong and you could just have a huge explosion.
How often would you think that happens? We've already got started off topic. See, I think we should turn this off and restart this.
I think this is golden. You're right. No second takes.
All right. Well, anyway, today we're completely off topic, but we're supposed to be talking about a rule of law. And we're going to be talking about a rule of law in relation to why grassroots mobilization and general strikes are basically the voice of the voiceless in our societies. And the voiceless are basically the 90% of people who are basically steadily and increasingly finding their lives more hemmed in, more difficult, less sustainable, and with days just bleeding into each other's. There's not enough hours in the day as a rule. And that's kind of the thing, is like, how do you change that? And one of the simplest things is a rule of law. And I mean, we pretend that we have one. Like, what do you think a rule of law is, Alex?
A rule, my understanding as someone who hasn't gone to law school, is that the rule of Josh has. That's the rule of that comment. That a rule of law means that the same standards are applied universally. That if there's a law, the law applies to everyone. And in our system of law in the United States, at least, ignorance of the law is not a defense.
Yeah, but that's not the rule of law. And I mean, the ignorance of the law is no defense is basically a fiction, because the laws are so vast and complex at this point that most people are ignorant of most laws that are out there. So, I mean, it is literally a legal fiction. But what my point with it is a rule of law is an idea that the law that applies to you and I applies the same to people like, say, Jeffrey Epstein, or people like Pierre Trudeau, or like Donald Trump, or who's that new president you got? The old senile one.
Joe
Biden. I mean, Joe Biden, Mr. Wrong side of history since segregation, has never met a war he didn't love. I'm pretty sure at this point, like most people who work in the American government are probably somewhat guilty of aiding and abetting war crimes. Canada too. And I mean,
That's
this
a
is
bold
something
statement.
it's true. You
Well,
think
then you could
you
say
guys
that about anyone working in any government.
no, you guys have been aggressors for the war on terror has been a global war, has been a war of aggression by the
Yeah, for
US.
20 years. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like fucking every president you've had that has not stopped those wars of aggression is in some way complicit. Um, although interestingly, I was reading that Trump actually escalated stuff against Russia compared to Biden, who's actually trying to de-escalate stuff against Russia, which is an interesting shift in rhetoric and is an entirely different subject on media honesty and framing when it comes to war and propaganda. We'll talk about that someday in the future, but this is about a rule of law. And I mean, a rule of law is the foundation upon which a society that works for everybody must be founded. If we have people in our society getting away with crimes left, right, and center, or knowing that they will be treated differently than other members of society just because of a X, Y, or Z, then you are ruled by laws. You don't have a rule of law. Ruled by laws means that the laws apply to you, but not to them. And I think increasingly what we're seeing in my society, which is Canadian, and I'd say your society, is that we're starting to see that we're actually ruled by laws. We don't have a rule of law.
That seems, I mean, we see that applied every day.
What's that? A rule of law?
No, that we're ruled by law.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, I would say, things is Pelosi's like stock portfolio. I mean, insider trading. She can't be making those sorts of gains without something sketchy going on. I mean, like it's everywhere you look in American society and even here in Canadian society. We've got like the SNC Lavalin scandal where it looks like a corporation was actually buying litigation and buying government policy.
Which we have in America constantly and all the time.
And this is the problem is it is rampant. And that means like it basically means that the illusion of being able to get of fair play is broken as soon as you realize these facts. And it's not like tinfoil hat material. It's like an actual real problem is that there really is almost no way out of the poverty trap as long as we are ruled by laws instead of having a rule of law.
Just letting that sink in. There is not a whole lot we can do except take to the streets to topple a system that is not going to allow us to do that. And they're going to put us all in jail if we do it.
And
until the jails are full. And at that point, it becomes a question of do people just keep filling the streets and demanding change? Because the politicians will go with whatever their corporate overlords tell them to do until the politicians have no choice. Yep. Because in the end, the politicians just want to stay in power. So if they know that they're going to be reelected, if they bend the collective will, then they will do it. And those that don't, we vote out of office. Honestly, it may be a good principle to just vote everyone out of office. You get one shot. That's it. The only problem with that is that it appears to take 7 to 8 years to become a decent legislator, which in the House of Representatives in the United States means you have to win re-election 3 times before you're even competent at doing the job.
Yeah. And that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for being able to fix it in the short term. And the short term is what we're looking at needing, because on top of this whole inequality and lack of social mobility issue that a lack of a rule of law has left us with, it has wrecked the environment that we need to survive, and it has destroyed so many things that we are going to require to get back on our feet. Like the relationships between people are at all-time lows because of corporate wedge issues and
social ones. The right wing in the United States loves to take issues and use them to be divisive because it's good for their political intentions.
Outrage sells.
I'm not speaking very well. Well, yes, yeah, but that is most effective if the population is silent. And so one of the attempts, or one of the things that they do, is to demonize anyone who doesn't completely automatically agree with you on X issue. So X issue dictates
centrists do that too as well. I mean,
so lefties do that.
Yeah.
I think that's a human thing. And it's probably in part due to the inflated degree to which people think their opinions have value. I mean, for fuck's sake, who are you and I? Why do we think anyone should listen to this fucking podcast, really? This is new media, and new media has opened up everyone's expectations of being heard. And so things that we as individuals identify as foundational to our identity, we don't bend on. And that's just, I think that's wired into our brains. I don't know what evolutionary point.
It's beliefs.
But like what evolutionary value does the neurological need to have beliefs have?
It's a cognitive shortcut.
Is that all it ends up being from a neuroscience perspective?
Yeah, beliefs and facts are dealt with in different areas of the brain. And the part of the area that deals with beliefs has a reaction to contradictory information, very similar to the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Okay, so it dumps ketacholines into your brain.
Basically, it causes
ketacholines are the neurotransmitters that cause the fight or flight response. Yeah.
And I mean, beliefs are a product of your environment. Like, these are things that are foundational. Most people don't even question their beliefs, and throughout their lives until recently. It's only really been the last 20 years that we've been able to access enough information to fundamentally question literally all of our beliefs at their core. And I mean, most people are wrong. Everybody's wrong. Like, everything you think is wrong. Like, that's like first premise out the gate is, no matter how smart you are, you didn't get it all right. The environment, we don't have nearly enough environmental information to work with. We're working on assumptions all the time. Our brain is filling in gaps. There's a lot of things that go on. So yeah, beliefs are really important for like environmental coping and dealing with complex environments. If I believe this tree is not going to walk, it would freak the shit out of me if it walks. It would be such a fun. If trees suddenly started walking tomorrow, it would fundamentally shift everything we believed about the world. Like
talking dog syndrome.
It's very similar to that, like something that is just so far outside your expectations. So they're just kind of shortcuts. And I mean, the more important the belief is to the individual and to that individual's personality, the more stronger the reaction. And I also find that the less the person has physically or mentally, like the stronger their inherent need for their beliefs to be correct are. So like precariousness and trauma and um, radical are really
Radicalization.
very fertile ground for radicalization,
Yeah.
because at those times the beliefs become very important. So I mean, beliefs are a really complex thing, but beliefs are not laws. And I mean, this is kind of where we run into issues with actually fixing things here. Is I run into a lot of people. I'm like, this is what's going on in this province, and they're like, yeah, but if you speak up, you get hit down. You can't speak up about certain things. And I mean, these are fundamental labor issues. At times, these are like literally like laws being broken by people in power. Like retaliation here is so accepted in my province that the major museum in the city of St. John's put out an ad saying that actually specified that if you were an activist in opposition to government, they wouldn't hire you because of blah, blah, blah reasons. So, I mean, blatant retaliation exists here.
Whereas in
Under,
America, we're a little more classy. We like to keep our retaliation in the smoky back room.
yeah, well, that shit happens too, but like you have to understand that a certain level of confidence begins to happen. And I mean, Newfoundland is about 50% rural. Um, I mean, it's
Population wise or land mass wise?
oh, population wise, land mass wise, there's barely anything on the island, and that's human made. It's largely uninhabited, especially
Okay.
once you bring in the other half of the province, Labrador, which is part of the mainland, which is a huge portion of land with like 5, 10, 15,000. I'm not exactly sure people on it.
Yeah, that's where I would put my supervillain compound if I had my druthers.
Why land? I'd like to go to Labrador someday.
Well, Labrador's going to be real sweet land in about 50 years.
Yeah, well,
As once we hit like
true.
2.4 more degrees, corn and wheat are now going to be grown in Canada. The American,
We already grow
uh,
corn and wheat.
yes, but it's going to be feasible much farther north than it is right now. And the volume of the yields is going to increase, but it will in part be dependent on the soil quality. But isn't Labrador formerly shelf, an ocean shelf? Like that's one of the reasons why the U.S. Midwest is so fertile, is that in prehistoric times it was an inland sea, and so shells and dead plant material, yada yada yada, like made the soil quite good.
Hmm. So back to law.
Or the lack of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, a popular topic right now is Kyle Rittenhouse, is it?
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse. I didn't follow it. I can't say I'm surprised by the verdict given US laws. I mean, the whole concept of the white vigilante in America is actually like getting away with a bunch of stuff is fairly well understood. And I mean, then you have on the other side of the spectrum, you have like women in jail in the US for like decades for killing their abusers. So, I mean, this whole who is allowed to act in self defense has always been something of a contradiction, I find, in America.
Yeah, it's proof that anyone who says privilege isn't a thing
Hmm.
needs to look at that verdict.
Well, I mean, he shot 3 people and got escorted in. The dude who blew up the black church got taken to Burger King. Like, who makes it in alive is almost where you can start to see the discrepancies.
And
Really?
black men go into police custody on a bogus arrest and end up getting murdered on the way to the police station.
Yeah. Up here in Canada, we have something called the Starlight Tours, I think they are in the northern provinces. And BC, it's where, and the rumors are is that what it would be is the cops would take Aboriginals who are drunk or sometimes not drunk out of town, take off their jacket in the middle of minus 40-degree weather and leave them to walk back. The way that this was actually discovered was one of the people made it back alive. It was like rumors for a long time. And I mean, this brings us back to the rule of law versus ruled by laws. In Canada and BC right now, the RCMP have arrested 2 journalists and a bunch of other Aboriginals who are occupying their unceded territory. And this is something a lot of people don't understand about Canada, is that Canada, the legal justification for Canada exists not because of the doctrine of discovery, not because of warfare, not because of any other bullshit. The only legal justification Canada has is in the treaties between the different Aboriginal groups and the Crown, or the different Indigenous groups. I'm sorry if whatever name it is. I try to stay PC with that here, but I'm going to stick to Aboriginal till
I
know
thought
better.
Canadians said First Nations.
There's
I've
more
been told by an American, a Native American from here that they don't like First Nations.
The First Nations is a controversial term as well, because there's also the Innu, the Inuk, and other and the Métis and stuff like that. Regardless, so these treaties between the Crown and the different Aboriginal groups, most of Canada isn't covered by treaty. So there's large parts of Canada where Canada is acting as a de facto force, not a de jure force. De facto being they're there saying that we are the law, but under the law, they don't have any right to be doing shit because no treaty, no Canada, no jurisdiction. So these are the RCMP have gone into this land and forcibly removed people and arrested 2 journalists. And this is not the first time the RCMP have arrested journalists. And we have a repeated problem with the RCMP abusing their power on behalf of corporations in Canada. Trudeau's actually referred to us as an extractive company by accident when he was trying to say extractive resource country or something. Got a video clip of that. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I guess our folks are just slightly more apt.
What?
I don't think apt is a word.
I think you guys just ignore it too. I don't think they're any better at it. It's like
it's slicker.
Hardly.
America, the media, well, yeah, but
the media fucking
once you can read through, media literacy is one of that should be a whole episode, is media literacy.
Yeah. Because I mean, they go to bat for this law breaking bullshit too. Like, they help bury this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I've been trying to get local media and national media to deal with some stuff I uncovered here while working in the legal field about lots of judges, lawyers, and cops, and they will not touch it. Not with a 10-foot pole. You have to try to get things done through the regular channels. And even when the regular channels don't work, you're supposed to be able to afford to go through the court process even when it's blatant bullshit. Like, it's really unreasonable here what's going on. Like, I've got I won't name names, but the stuff I've got on several judges, like, there are judges here who need to be fired. Probably arrested.
And you just touched on one of the points that is the reason why we're ruled by law and
Yeah,
not
they get
under
away with
a
this
rule
shit.
of law is that those of us without the economic means to employ lawyers to seek redress for us to get our wrongs righted,
Yeah.
if we can't afford that legal, we're fucked.
Yeah, there's no access to justice. In Canada, we have a huge access to justice problem. And we, as a result of this huge access to justice problem, we also have a really bad wrongful conviction problem. Like lawyers know that people are pleading guilty because they can't afford the trial.
And we, at least in Iowa, have what's called legal aid.
Legal
where
aid's
you can
fucking
go and
useless.
get free. And here it's not necessarily useless. It's just so strapped that its standards for helping people are dictated by the grants that it's operating under. So say it gets a grant from VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act funds. It has to screen out anybody who's not a woman seeking redress for domestic or sexual violence. And so, like, that's a problem we have around here, is that even the average person can't go to legal aid to get assistance because legal aid's hands are tied by their funding sources. So if you don't have the money to buy lawyer time, you're screwed.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to Canada. The reviews I've done of legal aid, both of individual cases and as an overview, they're underfunded, their lawyers are overworked, there's not nearly enough of them. I mean, yeah, we have and there's a lot of people they will not work for. So like you have to be the right kind of poor to get legal help. And that leaves a vast amount of Canadians unable to afford legal help and unable to access legal aid. So that when I say they're useless, that's why I'm saying they're just fucking useless. Hi, I'm surly. I will swear.
So if there is one set of rules for us.
Yeah.
And there's another set of rules for the top 89 to 99%. And that 10% chunk. And there's another set of rules for the top 1%. Then
there's
how
the rules
do we
for the corporations? And then there's the rules for it. There's
well,
a lot of
those
ways that are like cut off and sectionalized, but I mean a rule of law. If a corporation is considered a person, then a corporation needs to be properly punished like a person. Like a corporation gets away with stealing from employees to the tunes of billions of dollars. For example, if you're looking at Amazon, I think it was $14 billion, or was it $14 million? I can't remember. I can't remember how much Amazon withheld, but like McDonald's also withhold pay. And there's no punishment for this. This is blatant theft. Why aren't people in jail? And I mean, it's because they're protected by corporate veils, even though they're behaving like criminals. So, I mean, this way of partitioning off the law, this way of increasing the complexity so that there's more nuance to it, has also created a way that has made our failure to have a rule of law extremely difficult to actually identify and pinpoint and fix as well, right?
Well, and they will regularly throw some elites under the bus when the elite has done something so egregious as to make it unfeasible to not prosecute them, or a company has done something so out of line that even the other companies say, okay, it's time to go after them. Then the rest of us think, oh, there are laws applying to these people. But in reality, it's one of the elites being thrown under the bus and fed to the proletariat. so that I know it's a weighted word, but
It is a very
I could
weighted
say the
word.
plebes.
Man,
I
at
mean,
this point, it's like
we're
the
much more
working
like the
class.
plebes, working class, the
Yeah,
average folk. But
most
those of us
people.
who make the money that they take from us in the
Yeah.
form of capital,
Yeah.
those individuals occasionally will feed the rest of us one of their own so that we think the system is working.
Hmm.
And that's not an example of the system working. And I am not someone who thinks we need to get the guillotines out and just line up the billionaires. I don't think we're there yet. I think these people should be heavily taxed out of existence. Billionaires shouldn't exist.
Really like, I used to be very much against the death penalty, but I'm starting to think that maybe like crimes against humanity and like environmental destruction should probably like elicit a death penalty. Preferably extremely publicly, because they'd be so rare and hard to catch that just making such an extreme example of them like would be useful.
That's going to take us down a whole rabbit hole. I'm going to hop over and move forward with our topic of, are we ruled by law or do we live under a rule of law?
Yeah.
And the answer is we're ruled by law.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why we need to get organized and we need to fix that problem.
Yeah.
The laws need to be applied. Laws need to be applied equitably across the board, so that anyone guilty of a crime is going down for that crime.
See, this is the other part about it is, what is crime is up for debate. Like there is, to a degree,
Sure,
a lot of people who are like, we've criminalized poverty to a large degree, and what looks like poverty, like loitering. Well, if you don't have a job and you've got nowhere to go, you spend time loitering.
Mandatory minimums are a crime, a poverty crime. Mandatory minimums on drugs, especially on crack cocaine. Like,
the war on drugs,
you can't afford the good shit. If you get caught with a tiny bit of crack cocaine, you're going to jail for X years. But if you get caught with the same amount of cocaine, you are not going to jail for X amount of years. Yeah. It's the same substance, just with different penalties applied.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the war on drugs was a war on victims, poverty, and mental health.
And largely the African American community, when you consider that crack was created by the CIA.
Didn't the CIA investigate them themselves and find that they did nothing wrong?
Oh, did they find that they did nothing wrong?
I actually came across that the other day.
That whole conspiracy theory that like the coke epidemic in California's inner city was a direct result of fundraising for like Iran Contra and stuff like that. That's not a conspiracy anymore. The Freedom of Information Act materials have come out.
Okay.
We know that the CIA used people to move drugs into, at the very least, Los Angeles, and sold the drugs and used the money to fund counter-revolutionary, counter-communist operations.
America's actually really basically been a giant dickhead for about 70 years.
Murder of Patrice Lumumba.
Well, the Nicaraguan like contra fascists, like funding of fascist rebels in Nicaragua, toppling of democracies, like America's never been. It's. I mean, in the 90s, we were more realistic about this. At least in Canada, it was like, oh, someone's terrorist is someone else's freedom fighter. Like America was fighting for gold, gold, oil, and dollars. And I mean, nothing's really changed. It's that people bought into the propaganda because a not very surprising retaliation to American imperialism finally happened. And America and the world shit themselves. It was bad. 9/11 was bad, but I mean, the reaction to 9/11, 9/11 was predictable. And the reaction to 9/11 was like monstrous, like to the point where we probably do need a Nuremberg 2.0.
Yeah, you've been calling for George Bush to go in front of the World Court for a long time.
International Criminal Court. Yep. I have. Justice needs to be seen done, right? And I mean, we really do need a rule of law. The world, everybody should be accountable to the same rules, you know?
I do know. I just wonder, do you, dear viewer, and here's your Alex moment.
Oh, God.
Ask yourself, do you want to live by rules that other people don't have to? We need rules for society to function. We need government for society to function, at least in some limited form. Definitely less than what we have now. But the only way we're going to get there is if we organize and mobilize and work together. Are you ready to get out there and rouse the rabble? Rouse? I don't know. I don't know if I am, but that's what we're working towards here.
I've been out a few times.
This has been your out.
I haven't been out the last few years since I got sick, but I was pretty active in 2016 forward. And before that, I was going to do pro bono stuff when I was a lawyer. I
did a bunch of stuff in my first couple of years from Korea, but there's only so much. And now that I just have no interest in getting involved in electoral politics anymore because it's just such utter bullshit.
The leaders will do what their masters tell them. And their masters are either going to be the people lining their pockets or the people voting them in, but it can't be both. And right now it's the people lining their pockets. And I firmly believe that about politics, honestly. Like the kickbacks.
The first way to get back to a rule of law instead of ruled by law is to make sure that we have political entities that are doing what we want them to do.
Yeah.
Politics. So voting is part of getting what you want. But holding them accountable,
the least you can do.
Sure, you say that with such contempt, but it's step number one. Yeah, step number one, vote. Step number two, get out there and pressure your politicians.
Yeah.
If you can't stand it to vote,
and a lot of people can't,
then get out there and pressure the politicians regardless.
And see, that's the thing, is the least you can do. So if you're going to bypass it, at least do the other things. And I know a lot of people just sit it out because they're exhausted. But I mean, change happens because it has no choice. And right now we're headed to a lot of scary things because we got lazy as a people.
Unless you want to live in a world where you work for Amazon, you live in a place owned by Amazon, you buy everything from Amazon, and Amazon actually hires all the cops and social workers and everyone else to the point where Amazon is the government and is managing your day-to-day life. Unless you want that to happen, we need to change things now, because corporate fascism is coming.
Yep.
Corporate fascism is the most likely
response. This is not the face of corporate fascism.
Yeah, it's a kitty. corporate fascism is the most likely response to the collapse of governments and climate catastrophe.
Yep. And
because
that'll
they're
kill
going to
the
be the only
species.
ones with the resources to ensure the survival of X amount of human beings.
Yeah, and that won't work.
Nope.
No, it's really interesting. I quite like it. See, you've read Catch-22, haven't you?
Yes.
Such a good book. I like this is like the ultimate Catch-22. The species either learns to work together or we learn to die together. It's beautiful. Like it doesn't become tighter than that.
Oh boy, there was so many rejoinders to that, but I'm gonna just let that go. Or no, I guess we can go with the ever classic phrasing.
He's still trying to think of something to say.
No, I wanted to say, like, my immediate response was to say, that's what they said. So it's a gender neutral one. But then they implies multiple people. And then that is even weirder. That like crosses the line and kind of creepy. So I don't know. Are you itching your cat's butthole?
No, I'm scratching her. She's got quite the winter coat. And she's being
All
very
right.
cuddly and moving around a lot.
All right. Well, with kitty time, we will end this rather haphazard episode.
Yeah, it's been all over the place.
I have been big.
I've been surly. Have a good one.
Oh yeah, like, respond, share,
Whatever.
Do the various social media things. But also, if you guys have like actual questions and issues you want addressed, let us know, because both of us are trained in research. Like, we can do research and learn new things. It's a good skill to have. Maybe we'll do a whole skill building season. Media literacy, basic research methodology, stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll see. Keep tuned. Thanks for watching.
Take care.
Bye-bye.